to the cloud. All yours.
Okay, Brendan, Jesse, and you want to go ahead and kick it off, and I'll just come in, whenever you say.
Go ahead, Jesse.
Sure. Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Good morning. Welcome everyone to the latest iteration, March 5th, 2022 of the Community Policing Ad Hoc. In attendance, we have members of the ad hoc, Commissioners Harbin Forte and myself, former Commissioner Dorado, Mr. Lyles, Mr. Contreras, Mr. Nesperos, Lieutenant Fable, and I believe we have, yes, Commissioner Howell, who just joined the line via phone. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
This meeting is, of course, recorded and open to the public, and recordings will be available on the website after, likely uploaded on Monday. Jose, could you kick us off?
Yeah, so unless I'm mistaken, we ended with a discussion around Section 4, the CRO assignment to neighborhood councils. If that's correct, is what we're seeing up on the screen acceptable? Is there any other additions, deletions, or comments on what we have there? If not, we're going to move on to 5. Anything on 4 we need to massage?
For those who can see the screen, I think they could.
Thank you for the reminder.
Yes, thank you. See, Mike Nesperos has the Ukrainian flag colors on. I have my blue on. Actually, I have blue and yellow on today too. Okay, very good. Now I can see. Good job.
Thank you, Jesse. Recognizing seniority around here. So again, anything on 4 we need to go over? Any comments? Any additions, deletions? Anything we want to touch on?
And Jesse just highlighted a parenthetical that we have about consider additional sentence about capturing community impact on reassignment. Did we ever agree on that, on what language might be added?
I think this was, I think this was a section about wanting to capture the community input about the impact on reassignment. And I will make sure I get that done.
Oh, okay, that's a note to you. Okay, all right, very good. And the record should reflect, I'm in court now. The record should reflect the appearances of Paula Hawthorne and Joe DeVries. Joe DeVries, all right, okay.
And as always, we really appreciate all you folks for taking the time on a Saturday, to help us out and putting this together. And we can't say that enough. So just really understand how much we appreciate you taking the time to join us. So again, Jesse's going to come back with something on the additional sentence for capturing community impact on reassignment. And
Yeah,
if there's nothing else on Section 4 that needs our attention, then I would suggest we move on to data collection and dissemination, Section 5. So reading down through this, wouldn't it be exciting? And this is why I really like this part about the CROs getting together every other, or I should say every twice a year, to share information about their respective duties, responsibilities, successes, failures, etc. and having that being open to the public, what an education that would be. So I really like this idea. And of course, if out of that would come reports to the Police Commission, the Safety and Services Oversight Commission, and the CPAB, what a capper on this kind of dissemination of information and exchange of information. Because again, I think it's clear that we have some real similar issues throughout the city. It's just a matter of severity, carjackings, robberies, etc. So there has to be this kind of interchange of information so that we really develop a strategy, no matter what the beat is, for dealing with these issues. And certainly the CROs are the closest to, in their coordination with the community, closest to the development of those kinds of strategies. So any thoughts about about this idea of this twice a year meeting of the CROs? And certainly, go ahead.
I think it's a great idea. But as I discussed with you earlier, I think maybe we could include, like, once a year that they would go to the police lineups and brief all of the people on patrol about what they're doing in their assignment as a CRO, so that the rest of the cops get a feeling that they're included in that process.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. What do folks think about that idea of there being a CRO briefing on a regular basis for letting patrol know what's happening in the community policing program, and what their successes and failures have been, but just bringing them up to speed on what's going on.
So I see that Lieutenant Fable has his hand up, as well as
sorry. Go ahead.
Mariano, and I thought that it might be useful to get a sense from Lieutenant Fable, not only on that point, but what the current practice is for CROs.
And I want to, excuse
Go
me, I
ahead.
wanted the record, also Creighton Davis has joined us, so he's on the call.
All right.
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks, Creighton. Acting Captain Febble, what's your?
Good morning, Mr. Dorado and everybody else. Great seeing everybody. So current practices right now is that every CRO puts a matrix posted up in our lineup room. To make that very simple, basically, is they actually have a template piece of paper that they post in the lineup room for each beat, and it says which project is going on relative to that beat. So and those are consistently updated monthly for our lineup rooms. So it
did we lose you, Acting Captain?
I'm sorry, am I still here?
Yeah, I think you got cut off.
Yeah,
unless
so I
you-
get kind of a bad connection here. So the matrix is posted in every lineup room for what the CROs are actively doing. That's updated on a monthly basis. It's been that way for my entire career, and we expect that the patrolman will review that and know what the CRO is working on and provide them information if they gather throughout their shift.
Okay, that's great to know. Go ahead, Mariano.
Did I come through all right?
Yes, you did. If you want to add anything to that, that's certainly useful. Acting Captain, we're going to move to Mariano.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Yeah, so I agree. That should be done twice a year or as often as possible. On the line above where it says where CRO should make every effort to disseminate information on community projects and priorities to involve and required staff, I think that should be CRO should disseminate and not make every effort. I think that is necessary. That should be a more assertive and something that should happen, because as I understand it, you can have the information in the lineup, room, but this is for involved and required department staff. And that, to me, insinuates that those are the people that are directly involved in these efforts by the CROs, and in community policing in general. The other further in the twice a year reports, I think that it's information, it's important to collect data. Data collection should involve some kind of demographics where race, gender, and perhaps income are mentioned, because where it says that, you know, the information is collected to see what efforts were successful and what weren't. You know, I think it's important to make some notes on demographics, particularly if there's always projects or efforts directing towards a specific demographic. So I think that without violating anyone's, you know, rights or anything, I think that that's important to collect that kind of information. Thank you.
Okay, Acting Cap Febble, you have your hand up still. Do you have another comment?
Just one last comment, sir. I certainly think that there's no non-benefit to the CROs meeting twice a year and collaborating information on successes and failures, because we're always going to have new challenges and new solutions. I think that's great. The only thing is that I would recommend separating the internal meeting to the meeting with all of the stakeholders and the public, because we use certain tactics and technology. Of course, that's always approved by the city, but methodologies that we would undermine our investigations and how we often solve some of these problems that we can't share with the public. It could compromise safety of officers and investigations going forward. So there should be some consideration for having one internal and one external meeting.
Thank you, Acting Captain. Reggie, what do you think of that?
Yeah, that's what I've been saying. I think
Okay.
we ought to cite. I've been reading it, researching this while you guys are talking. It's 6254, the government code, subsection F1. It says that you have to disclose this information, names, activity, times, dates, and it, except when, and they cite those three circumstances that the acting captain just talked about. You know, if it's going to endanger an officer, if it's going to harm the investigation, it's going to endanger some undercover operation, or if it's going to some witness, some citizen might be in danger. They don't have to tell you, and they won't tell you. So I don't think it's reasonable to expect that. So if we just have a meeting where they spoke to their own officers to share that information, that's fine.
Okay, so you're okay with an internal
Yeah,
and external meeting?
Very much so.
Okay.
Yeah.
All righty.
Commissioner Shea has his hand up, excuse
I'm sorry.
me. And then Joe DeVries.
Thank you. Internal, external, I understand. I'm probably going to lose this fight about it, but you know, I think that it is extremely valuable for the public to have knowledge as to the extent that the police are using certain technology or strategies, what is permissible, what is not permissible. Transparency for me is always a big factor, but I completely understand. I guess the question is, considering how busy all of these CROs are we considering then 4 meetings if it's both an internal and an external meeting, or just an internal meeting twice a year and then a report out to a joint meeting to various stakeholders?
You know, sir, I appreciate that you recognize the strain logistically that the CROs are under. I don't think it would be unreasonable to have two of each a year, because these meetings probably wouldn't take longer than 60 minutes. And then just for everybody on the call, because you bring up an excellent point, sir, is that all of the methodologies that we use are, of course, department approved, as well as they go through our privacy commission, regarding that transparency. If anybody within the city requested our methodology, we are fully prepared to present that information to ensure that we're, collaborating judiciously with the public within policy.
And we'll go with Joe, but we should note that Pastor Thompson has joined us now. Joe is next.
Go ahead, Joe.
I'm sorry. I think I might be having a bad signal. I heard Captain Febble speaking about the Privacy Commission, and then I skipped out. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Ken?
Okay, good. Sorry, I'm in transit. Sorry about that. It's just that kind of day. I think what the captain said about the Privacy Commission is absolutely right. Technology is fully reported out there. And actually, we're going to be updating the website soon to see that all those reports are available and searchable easily for the public. The point I wanted to make is just getting the CPAB, SSOC, and Police Commission together. As you know, you have an annual meeting with the City Council. It's hard logistically, quorum, logistics, planning. Doing it twice a year with all the CROs, I think that's a lofty goal. And I know Reggie's going to tell me that the whole point here is to be lofty. But I think, the more meetings we have, the less we're out there running around problem solving. And I just want to really caution you guys. The police have to report to the Privacy Commission, the Police Commission, the CPAB, the SSOC, the Public Safety Committee, special meetings, town hall meetings, neighborhood council meetings. I think a report is great. I think once a year, or if the report could be incorporated into that meeting of all of those bodies that already is in the SSOC requirements, might make more sense. And people need to read the packet ahead of time. Like, these reports need to be available. But I just think 2 more meetings would be tough.
All right, Commissioner Shea.
I think the point of this is to information share between CROs. I'm not necessarily to have there may be a public transparency component to it, but I think the main point that we want here is that they share information, right? Not just the CROs, but also the neighborhood service coordinators, right? Lieutenant Fable, do you have Joe, sorry, I keep saying Lieutenant Captain, Acting Captain. Internal meeting, could that include NSCs, the service coordinators?
I think that they're a critical function to that meeting as well. I mean, they're really our partner. That's they're just a critical component of the whole thing. Their absence would be detrimental to the meeting, in my opinion.
Okay.
All right.
Joe, do you still have your hand up?
Oh, sorry. No, I'll take it down when I figure out how on my phone.
Okay.
I will imagine that my hand is up. I'm still unclear who's going to be at the meetings. Who will be present? Lieutenant Febo, who do you envision being present at these meetings we're talking about?
I believe the NSC's critical component. I know, as busy as Joe is, he's always excellent for input and insight as the methodology is going forward. And I'm thinking more from an internal perspective. I think that those 2 would be extremely important to have at the meeting, and everybody else would certainly be a bonus.
So, do you see the language on the screen where it says twice a year all CROs and NSCs should meet to share and disseminate information on the following topics?
So should this be every single CRO and every single NSC, or should it be representatives from each of their departments with reports?
I'd like to keep all, if a CRO or NSC can't make it for, a good reason, that's fine. but I think it's important that that as many as can make it come together and share this kind of information, particularly if it's the CROs and the NSCs together, they're the ones closest to what's going on. And I'm particularly interested in the report out or the meeting to the community. And for something like that, I would not necessarily think that all the CROs or the NSCs need to be there. I think representatives can report out on what they're able to on these topics. But I don't think it's necessary that all of the CROs and the NSCs come together again for the meeting with the Police Commission, SSOC, CPAB, public, etc. And in terms of the quorum difficulties, well, again, if a reasonable date is put together and a quorum simply does not occur, oh well. I think it's the value is the information that goes out, and that to me is the real important part of this. And certainly it's going to take some time from OPD being out in the street, but I think the value on balance is far more important for this information to go out to these commissions as well as the public in general. So whatever it costs in terms of time out on the street, I think is more than worth it. Joe, I see your hand up again.
Yeah, look, Jose, can we just not make it a joint meeting? Why can't these reports come to the regularly scheduled meetings of each of those three bodies? One person, it gets submitted in writing in advance, and then the people, someone from OPD and city administrator come and present it. But I'm just saying, coordinating 2 more meetings with 3 separate bodies, I'm just telling you from a staff perspective, it kills us. Like, why not just have it at the regular meetings?
A regular agenda item.
Yeah, if
Correct.
I think that's reasonable. I think the real value is that the information go out. Yeah, if it's a joint meeting, I don't know that that's necessarily a huge value. The importance is the information going out to the commissions and the public. So
Great.
yeah,
Because I got to tell you,
okay with
joint
that.
meetings, I don't believe joint meetings ever get down into the level of detail that we would all like, because there's always a huge number of introductions and speeches. I think the regular monthly meetings is where, and maybe even subcommittees or committees of these groups, like the committee we're in right now, I think that's where you really learn.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Right. Is that it, Joe? I'll go to the.
Yeah, that's it for me.
Captain. All right, thanks. Acting Captain.
Yeah, Joe. Hey, one thing I just wanted to iterate is that the presence of the people who could get the information is really what I was kind of directing my information towards. The relative frequency of the meetings, that's just really not my strong suit in the logistics portion. So I would certainly heed Joe's recommendation on that, because I'm not the guy getting everybody together to have a quality meeting. So I can't comment on that. I don't want to say, hey, we should all get together X amount of times. And if it's really going to create hardship on all these other entities, we should certainly defer to Joe for his experience on that.
So I'm okay with it going to to the separate commissions, but that's just me. What everybody else think about that?
Excuse me, Mariano has his
I'm
hands
sorry. Go ahead,
up.
Mariano.
Yes, if we're going to go ahead and do that, then I would strongly recommend that at these individual committee meetings that that we focus on communication, partnership, and transparency, so that eventually these will get disseminated out instead of having a collective joint meeting. That all these 3 entities or however many entities are, that we make sure that we focus on these 3 things: communication, partnership, and transparency. Thank you.
And can I ask before we go I would like for Joe to summarize what meeting he envisions, what, when, where, the attendees, and how, and the frequency. So Joe, what are you envisioning? What,
Can I clarify your ask? Is that for the report out, or is that for this twice a year meeting where there's information sharing we're talking about?
the twice a year meeting or the annual meet? Are we talking about different meetings, or are we talking about this twice a year meeting? And what are you were saying it's hard to get everybody together for what, for an annual meeting, or what are your concerns, Joe? I'd just like to find out what it is, what we're talking about, and what
Yeah,
the,
what I'm proposing is simply that you remove that suggestion of a joint meeting, that you have these twice a year reports, so the CROs and the NSCs get together internally and they produce this information. And then it comes, the information that can be shared is done so in a public report to each body at one of their regularly scheduled meetings. So it's just an agenda item. And that way, we avoid that logistic, like just the heavy lift of having another joint meeting where you get a whole bunch of expensive brass in the room and cost us a lot of money. The NSCs have a monthly report to the CPAB. The OPD does a monthly report, but I think this report would be much more robust, and it might take up the majority of each of those boards meetings, but that they just happen at that, at that time, at the regularly scheduled meeting.
and Paula has her hand up, Jose.
Okay. Paula,
Thank you. Of course, I'm going to agree with Joe about these joint meetings, having participated in a couple. I do feel, I very definitely support what's happening on the page. I'm not sure whether Mr. Friebel can see it because he's on his phone, but this is saying that twice a year there is this meeting with all CROs and NSCs. They produce a report, and a report is produced from that meeting, and that report would be given to the Police Commission, SSOC, and the CPAB separately as a part of their regular meetings. It would be, as Joe has said, an agenda item at those regular meetings of those groups. And I absolutely agree. We do not want to have another joint OPC, SSOC, CPAB meeting. We're supposed to have one once a year anyway, according to Measure Z. It also includes City Council, and it is it's a very difficult thing to schedule and to have happen. And what happens there typically is extremely high level. And as Joe has said, not the detail that I think people really want and that they can get to in the regularly scheduled meetings.
thank you, Paula. Did you get your question answered, Brenda, from Joe?
I guess so. If everybody else understands, somebody else can explain it to me.
I think the logistical part is the reporting out part. That is the nightmare, not the getting everyone together to discuss the tactics and the information here.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, then we're all in agreement that twice a year, the CROs and the NSCs will get together internally to discuss these topics that are on the screen. And then out of each one of those twice a year meetings, there'll be a report that's developed that will then go as agenda items to the Police Commission, the SSOC, and the CPAB. Is that our understanding? Okay. Sounds good. This is exciting stuff. So I think we're on track. Go ahead, Jesse, go ahead and continue.
Sorry, just making a note to myself.
Okay, good. All righty, so we're good with what we're seeing up there, particularly in the yellow? And yeah, I have to agree about the joint meetings. You use up half the meeting just doing introductions. So if we're pretty much, at least for now, okay with that part of section 5, then we can move down to the evaluation section.
So
How
this
do
is
we
not,
evaluate? I'm sorry. Okay.
go ahead, sorry, yeah.
How do we evaluate CROs? What are
So
people's thoughts
this
around that?
is a draft section. It was not part of the original proposal. I think that there was a lot of discussion about, I think mainly community input about CROs, but also how OPD, the department internally, may evaluate CROs. I'm sure that they do already, but such that they recognize the good work that CROs do and in support of their, eventual progression and ascension in the department. I see Captain Fable with his hand up.
Unmute,
Get it wrong.
Captain. Yeah, okay, great. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me just give everybody a foundation of how our appraisal system works. So we do have a template standard for officers citywide across the board, and we use that template for everybody, regardless of the position they're in. Example, you could be in CRO, you could be in ceasefire, you could be in the Violent Crime Center. We use the same one, but there is a carve out specifically in our appraisal system for community policing. And what we document in that portion, and this will more heavily play into the favor of a CRO, say versus a patrolman, is that we do track the number of SARA projects they initiate. We do track the number that were successful. But things that we like we don't track just because it's logistically it's difficult, is that we don't track like how many NSCs that they're working with, or those type of very in the weeds statistics. What we really judge them on is did they participate in X number of community meetings? Were they on time and providing the proper information? Did they get good feedback from the community at those meetings? And how many SARA projects did they open and close? Now, with regard to the SARA projects number, we go according to the Measure Y protocol, and which requires an officer open and close 2 a year. So if an officer finds themselves opening and closing 2 a year, they meet expectations by that standard. If they do more, then they exceeds expectations in that category. So we go specifically off the metric, so it removes essentially opinion and any type of bias. It's you either did it or you didn't. I hope that helps.
It does. Where is that? Where could I find that policy so that I can make sure it mirrors to some extent? Or
Sure. Yeah, it's in the Measure Y protocol. I could forward it to you if you wouldn't mind just emailing me a reminder.
Not the measure, is that a separate protocol or just Measure Y? Because what I was talking about was you have a template standard for officers across the board and a carve out for community resource officers. That sounds like an internal police document, right? Where's that document?
Well, the evaluation is the same. Everybody from patrol to ceasefire to CRO gets evaluated on their community policing standard. That's really built into the DNA of the department. CROs tend to have more information in there because they're continuously working with the community, but it's the exact same template.
Where is it?
We have it. I could send you a copy of an example.
May we see it also?
I will email the
yeah,
lieutenant. We'll get it, and then I'll disseminate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I had a quick question for the acting captain. Is there any consideration, maybe is the word, in in the OPD evaluation, particularly of community policing, community resource officers, for the opinion, the impression, the evaluation by community members for
Yeah.
that particular CRO.
The portion that would reflect that would be CRO's documentation or essentially community documentation to the supervisor or direct correlation to the CRO in terms of community feedback. Like we really want to capture like letters of appreciation in their evaluation. That's a big one. Alternatively, though, with the department policies and procedures, if a citizen is unsatisfied and initiates a complaint, that obviously falls in their record of conduct, which is also captured in the evaluation.
Okay. So basically, there is a consideration of community input in the overall evaluation of not just CROs, but of course all OPD. Is that correct, Acting Captain?
No, that's absolutely correct. And letters of appreciation are one of those things in our evaluation that is really highly coveted. So we don't get them as often as we would like, but we absolutely capture them if present in our appraisals.
One of the things that Reggie brings up, and rightfully so, is the change in culture to the point that, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand up, Mariano. Go ahead.
Oh, you might be addressing what I'm going to raise is, what steps, and I seem to remember we talked about this before. I forget what section, but like what steps to correct or improve when the evaluations, when the CROs are not, meeting these expectations. Is there retraining? Is there and if this is happening all the time, do they get moved? Where can we put that in? How do we, just like if you get letters of commendation from community, from your supervisors, we want to share that. We want to see if we can replicate that. But on the other hand, if there's some, negative appraisals, then, how do we correct that? That's my question. Thank you.
That's a good question, Mariano. So it's kind of a broad question. I think I can answer it in two parts. First of all, if somebody has, clear dissatisfaction with the process of their CRO and they believe that it rises to a violation of department policy, we capture that through internal affairs. And that's also captured in the appraisal. The second part is more difficult because I'll give you an example. This officer left so we can speak freely. So we had Officer Hone was our Beat 27 officer, right? Half of the community loved him. I would say 3/4 of the community loved him. He had two particular critics on a block that really detested him because they wanted really all of his resources for their one issue, but he had to spread his resources over the entire beat as fair for the NC. So we have to be careful essentially in saying, well, is an officer doing a good job? Because people have highly varied opinions. So what we do is if they're extremely dissatisfied, we refer them to the complaint process if they wish to do that. Or alternatively, if they feel their CRO is doing good, we give them, the opportunity to provide a letter of appreciation, which is captured there. Now, third question, how do we correct what we believe is inefficient or poor behavior with regard to community policing? That, of course, goes through the mentorship process. We have internal documentation, which we call supervisory note files, which is part of our overall risk management process in the department. And we capture all training, positive, basic training, or even corrective action training if we don't believe somebody's performing appropriately. And if they're continuously not performing appropriately, then that's a discussion we have with the union and the officer if they want to continue forward in the CRO program.
Brenda.
Yes, thank you. Acting Captain Febbo, and maybe Jesse too. I want to make sure that we are going to get the evaluation template that Acting Captain Febbo referred to.
I already sent him the email.
Oh, okay then.
Yeah.
All right, great. Commissioner Howell asked for the template too. I said, I think that's what Jesse asked for. Okay, so we will definitely get it. All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Now, I don't know the exact answer off the top of my head, but I will refer out to our union. I don't believe that we can change the template without a meet and confer with the union because it's a universal document. So that's a question that I'll have to reach out and ask. But nevertheless, I will get that template out to everybody here shortly.
Thank you. All right. Reggie Lyles has his hand up.
Go ahead, Reggie.
Do you guys do, Captain Fable, do you do any surveys of the officers, like, 5 stars? They do it on practically every other employee these days that's dealing with the public. Do you do any surveys of the citizens of how their officers are performing?
That's a good question, sir. Funny enough, we don't do surveys because the supervisors frequently attend the community meetings with the officer. It's just been my experience working across the entire city that community members of Oakland have no hesitation during meetings to express their desire or lack thereof for their CRO. So we tend to get a very good gauge just on participation in the meeting in and of itself.
I was just thinking that if there was some kind of like Survey Monkey type, how is your officer performing, 3-star, 2-star, not going into specifics, it would be an indication of how that officer is being received. I want to quickly say that I do agree with you that if people have an attitude towards a person, they can distort that, but you ought to have other indicators to balance those distortions out. That may be a way of making sure that the citizens or the community feels they're empowered, that they're getting the right individual and that individual's listening to them. And then on the other hand, the community officer understands that, I have to deal with these people, even the difficult ones, and try to, I'm looking for a word, appease, serve, respect. That's a cultural shift from what some people feel they have been getting they haven't been getting from all law enforcement, not just Oakland, and we want to change that cultural dynamic, if that makes any sense.
No, it certainly does. And I certainly do value surveys because it offers people the anonymous opportunity to share their emotions, without being the risk of any type of, negative feedback, just for them sharing their opinion, which is great. The one thing I do know, though, is that the department has a stringent policy with regard to survey capture, and that all surveys must be approved by the chief of police per policy.
Okay.
That's not a mountain too high.
Jesse has his hand up, and Reggie, if you are done, are you done, Reggie? You can lower your hand, and Jesse's hand is up. And then we'll go to Creighton after Jesse.
I think that Creighton may be addressing my specific ask or point. I'm not sure, but I was going to say that sounds like a situation where we may want to build on CPAB's community empowerment directives, and to sort of see if there's some way we can, from the NSC side or neighborhood council side, encourage participation or surveys. I certainly agree that anonymous surveys, you do get very honest feedback in anonymous surveys, but you also get very honest feedback, say, in a juror questionnaire where someone has to put their name on it. So may not have to be anonymous.
So Creighton has his hand up.
Yeah, Jesse and I are aligned. He hit the nail on the head. That's where I was going as well. thinking about maybe, as a metric, figuring out exactly, to Jesse's point, how we can leverage neighborhood councils and how we can think about neighborhood councils either conducting a survey or issuing, a recommendation or some kind of, grade or some kind of, qualitative assessment on a CRO by polling a number of members of the community or participants in neighborhood councils. So what that might look like is like each neighborhood council could issue, on an annual basis, a small, report or a reaction to, how they feel about a CRO based on their own polling and their own, efforts. And then that could be a way to kind of relieve the burden from OPD to have to like conduct surveys and could provide some more honest feedback because it is coming from the community. So that could be one way to do it.
Great. Mariano's hand is up.
Can someone give me an example of how the crime analysis metric would be used to evaluate a CRO?
So that's from me. I just thought that sometimes we may have a thought about, well, we have Search and Sarah projects. They are designed to deal with a particular issue that rises to the level of criminal activity, and to what extent as that such project may have a impact on either that criminal activity or criminal activity in a particular beat on a particular block. That was me just sort of stream of consciousness thinking about it.
Okay, thanks.
I had a quick question for Acting Captain Pebble. On going back to Officer Hone, how 3/4 of the community loved him, but 2 persons did not. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Reggie.
Oh, no, I'll go after you, please.
Okay. So going back to him, Acting Captain, what was the position of the specific neighborhood council in terms of his performance? Because you could have many people that were happy with him, and evidently a couple of people were not. So I'm interested to know what was the in the middle of this disagreement about his performance, what was the position of the neighborhood council?
So that's a good question, Mr. Dorado. So the challenge is, and this is not infrequent among any NC, is that you have 2 separate groups of community members that believe that their immediate need on their block was paramount. And the CRO, I mean, he didn't choose, he was democratic about that. He allowed the community to vote at the NC, and 3/4 of the community voted for one block to be the project and not the other block to be the project. So of course you have the people who were not voted on for their block really took slight to it. And they wouldn't take it out on their neighbors during the meeting. They took it out significantly on the CRO, which was of no fault to his. He simply went through the democratic process and it just didn't work out in their favor. But they were highly critical of him for that, stating that they didn't believe that the CRO was giving their consideration any resources, but that simply wasn't true. He just made the project at the location that they voted on, and that's where he had to direct the majority of his resources, especially given the challenges that he had faced on that beat. That beat had significant challenges. It was a policing beat 27. So he was kind of, I hate to say it, he was kind of in a lose-lose position. There was no way he can make everyone happy.
Hey, I want to point out these people also took it out on the NSC, one of our best. And of course, the accuser, being racist for not meeting their needs, brought in city council members and other high level officials and took up a huge amount of resources because they couldn't get along with each other on the street. I mean, it was just ridiculous. And sadly, CROs and MSCs get vilified and pulled into these things that they can't solve often.
And to Joe's point, you know what the result is? He quit. He left OPD in general, went to another agency.
And I have NSCs who don't want to cover that beat because they're afraid it's going to happen to them too.
Wow.
Reggie, did you still have another point?
I did. First, I want to comment on the last thing. That's unfortunate, but that's the nature of the job that we have. And you know, and if the guy wants to leave, then we get somebody else. Next man up, next woman up. And you know, you're gonna have these kind of issues when you're trying to, you know, mete out justice for everybody. So that's just gonna happen. It's unavoidable. I wanted to go back to the issue about using the crime metric as an analysis, and with another question, you know, because I don't think that's a good indicator at all. Because if you're in a community like the one we just described, where there's a lot of crime and it's overwhelming, and the officer is treading water trying to work against this enormous amount of crime, versus someone in another part of the community where there's very little crime because of economics, isolation, geography, you name it. Does that mean that officer, that CRO officer is better than the one that's you know, is overworked, understaffed, trying to get along with difficult people? See, maybe that guy where the most crime is your best officer. So I think the crime analysis is probably one we should be careful about, because you can have folks that do very little in a low crime area looking like they're the best CRO. They're not doing much.
That makes a lot of sense. I don't think this is necessarily crime reduction in general. If I was crime reduction, I would just say crime reduction, right? I think it's specifically about what project are you initiating? How is it successful? To what extent does it mitigate the crime specific to that project?
Okay.
I can definitely lay that out. Again, it's something that I think we will have to see with the template coming about evaluation, and have a consideration about whether, if we're going to put something like that in, that may move this into a meet and confer situation with OPOA.
Well, I understand better now. Thank you.
I mean, like, it's also a great question. I definitely don't think that crime reduction period is going to be the metric. That's just too hard.
Just a quick comment to the captain, and I guess to Joe too, is that it just seemed to me, for lack of a better word, kind of chicken shit that the two critics of Officer Hone didn't take it up with the people who actually made the decision as to what was going to be the priority, but then took it out on him when he was just following what the community wanted. So pardon the word, but that just and that's why I was asking about the position of the neighborhood council, and you know, it just that's just unfortunate, because you know, we're you know, it's just unfortunate that, you know, we see what was probably a pretty good CRO decide to leave because of the static behind this. So it's something I'm gonna on the side I'm gonna look into, because you know, this is something that I'm sure has happened before and will happen again. So how, and this is to Creighton, how can the CPAB take a role in cutting off this kind of a result? Because it certainly doesn't seem to me, from what I'm hearing from the acting captain, that it was a fair, and it seemed to me like it was a lose-lose for everybody. So
How about if we go to Creighton and then to Mariano?
Yeah, and I think, you know, if we create some kind of procedure where, you know, the neighborhood council as a whole issues, you know, a recommendation, or, you know, a grade for an officer, then it will kind of overshadow, like, you know, a minority of individuals in the neighborhood who are having, you know, a particular issue with an officer. But at the same time, you don't want those voices to be excluded. But I think if the neighborhood council is able to issue, you know, like, let's say an A grade for that officer, then that will by definition, be more resounding than just like a couple people who are saying, hey, like this officer is not doing a good job. So that's something just to think about as we build this out.
Yeah, but sometimes the neighborhood council is really just a few strong vocal people, and they could be the ones dissatisfied with the service. I don't know. I mean, and sorry, this one really gets to me, because we don't defend people that do good work when accusations are launched at them from the community, and it creates a whole drain in the city. It's why a lot of city workers won't stand up and do the right thing, because they're afraid of getting their head bit off. And some of our neighborhood councils have fewer than 8-9 people showing up at a meeting, and some of them the leadership hasn't changed in 20 years. And if that person doesn't like someone, then it can be very, very difficult.
Mariano's hand is up.
Yeah, on this issue here. So to me, it speaks to maybe the process, or and not so much the evaluating the individual, but so what do we do about this, right? How is this corrected? It seems like now, people, officers, CROs don't want to be part of this because, they're going to get their heads chewed off. But so that's not a solution. So, what do we do? How do we handle this? And I think in general, we're addressing this because we want to, establish a robust community policing policy, right? That not only just allows the 8 people to come to the meetings, but we expand to the entire neighborhood, and all the residents can possibly participate in this. So how do the evaluation of the process, because we've all have experienced and heard at public comment where it's the same person, saying, negative things, and they have the loudest voice, right? But, I've learned a long time ago that a lot of times, there's some truth to what they say. And so how do we find that small truth, and how do we, honor that, address that, and exclude all the other negative things? So how do we take care of this? It seems like we're not, so it's a negative thing, and we're seeing it as that, but it seems like in this policy is not addressing that. How do we evaluate the process? How do we take care of that so that this doesn't happen? Thank you.
Jose, and then Reggie.
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to what Joe said. The fact that there are some people that have been in the neighborhood councils for 20 years, and there are some councils that have, a very myopic view of what the neighborhood council should do, to me speaks to the failure of OPD and the city in implementing community policing going back 25 years, because there should have been, and should be now, a massive effort to engage as many aspects, many demographics of the community as possible in the community policing process. So in fact, that doesn't happen. So in fact, that there's as wide and diverse a view of what comes out of the neighborhood councils in terms of their perspective and policies and practices and priorities as possible. So while it's true that is what Joe said about the fact that there are some strong personalities and some people have been there too long, frankly, in some neighborhood councils, that speaks more to the failure by the city to implement community policing than it does to the people that have dominated neighborhood councils and sometimes run out good people, like it sounds like what happened in 27 with Officer Hone. So that's one. The other is I want to go back quickly to the idea of evaluations and how that should be, the evaluation should result in a change of culture within OPD, so that the status and such that the status of CROs is really raised up. And we've talked about this before, but I just wanted to touch on that. that in fact, if we're going to have evaluations and feedback from the community taken seriously by OPD, that that work in coordination with OPD practices and policies internally to raise the status of CROs. So in fact, it's seen as a real goal, a real advantage, a real significant contribution to safety and security and the overall quality of life in Oakland. I'll leave it at that.
How about if we go to Reggie and then to Acting Captain Febo?
Yeah, I think what we're talking about is unavoidable. I think it's no way we can eliminate that, that possibility of one or two ingrates or bad citizens having too much say-so in their community. I mean, we don't want to legislate that. If somebody's been concerned about their community for 20 years and have been coming to the meetings when they weren't getting any respect or whatever, well, you know, they probably should be patted on the back. And so there's nothing we can do about that. We want more folks in. What we can do about the officers is, you know, what I said some weeks ago was that, you know, the people who I would consider to be the next sergeants and lieutenants and captains and et cetera ought to be the kind of folk who were in this program. You know, I mean, the qualities I'm looking for are the folks who want to see a stepping stone to promotion and other lateral rewards are folk who apply for this program. And I don't think we ought to be ashamed of saying that if we want to change the culture of Oakland Police Department. You know, you really want folks who are community-oriented police officers. So, and thirdly, you know, good officers leave, bad officers leave. That's called attrition. So it's upon management to keep the hiring process going, keep the recruitment process going, keep people coming in to the agency. You know, if a guy says I'm a good officer and the person is a good officer, and then they leave because they get a better opportunity for their family or whatever, well, you know, and then say I'm leaving because this person made too many phone calls to me or complained about me too often. Well, see you later. You know, and that's how our attitude ought to be. We're not gonna, we should not say, to keep you around here, we want you to ignore the person who's saying or making demands upon your services. No, we want you paying attention to them. So each case is an individual case. I would be curious to find out what was the other side of this argument about this particular situation. And then I would also want to say, well, what did you do to try to address that with them? I don't think we can avoid this, and it shouldn't hold us back.
Captain Febo? And then
Hey, so lastly, guys, just with the evaluation process, this is kind of a little bit of a reverse psychology of our smarts in this ad hoc. I actually don't think we necessarily need to focus significantly on the appraisal process, because the ultimate solution to getting the best CROs is not waiting a year and then evaluating them. It's actually what we discussed earlier in the policy is our modification to the recruitment requirement. Instead of going on an order of merit list where we just have to take the next person who just puts their name on, regardless of qualification, if we go to that's a transfer list, I apologize, where we work on a transfer list. So we have to take everybody in the order that they apply. Moving to an order of merit list, in other words, an interview and qualification process, should really allow us to recruit the best quality CROs. And that will make the evaluation process on the back end of what we're currently working with totally sufficient. But the changing of the transfer policy to CRO, that's the critical fix here.
Right. Paula, I can hear from you, and then I do have a question. Go ahead, Paula.
Sure, unless you wanted to, anyway. So I've been sitting here listening to this, and you know, I managed people for my entire professional career, and I just have had a hard time getting my head around using any kind of a community poll to evaluate someone. There's something about that that I just find icky. And so the way that I wanted to put that is, I think we have two different things that we can do. One is the police supervisor has got to be the person who is evaluating the person that reports to them. They just do. That's just the way things work in my world anyway. I don't know. Anyway, but then there also should be a community evaluation, and that community evaluation can certainly be something that we ask that the neighborhood councils do. Neighborhood councils should poll their members to evaluate the CRO and make that poll public and send it to the police department to do with as they wish. You know, I mean, at some point we can't disempower the structure of of a manager with people reporting to them. Like I'm sorry, maybe I'm just not kind of new agey enough or something, but I really think that you need to have people reporting to other people and those other people making these judgments. So I don't know. I mean, I know I'm not being very coherent, and I'm sorry. It's not that it's too early and I've had lots of coffee, but anyway, thank you.
Well, Mike gave you a thumbs up on that, Mike Nisperos. I want to go back. I want to go back to the point, the issue of there being people in some of the neighborhood councils who seem to be firmly entrenched in a certain view of what's going on. I think someone referred to it as a myopic view, and that they've been in positions of power for many, many years. And maybe they don't want to cede that power or allow any new leadership in. And I think, Jose, you said you thought it was the fault of the police department for not building better relationships. And so I just wanted a little bit more clarification on what the police department could do to encourage maybe some different kinds of leadership. Where the young people, if they're just people who have been coming for the last 20 years or so, are they bringing along any young people who may have some different ideas about what's needed in their communities? I don't know if we can do anything about it, but it seems to me that I don't know that the answer is that it's the police department's fault that some neighborhood councils don't take a more expansive or perhaps a more fair view about what should be done in the neighborhood. And let's see, Jose, you might want to respond first. We had Jesse, we have Joe and Creighton.
Okay, I'll just, let me make it this brief. The NSCs, for the most part, have been and part of the OPD for, the life of community policing, even though they've been off twice, I think now. So I put the blame, and I'll put it that way, of the lack of community involvement on a general level, or on a more diverse level, in the neighborhood councils on OPD, because they had the supervisory responsibility of the neighborhood services coordinators. And I don't see, over the years, I have not seen that the neighborhood services coordinators really did the job as is described in their job descriptions. I'll just say that they were a failure, in my opinion, and I made that clear. But the OPD had the overall supervisory responsibility to make sure that they did their jobs, and they didn't do that kind of supervision, and that's what OPD fell down. So, and I put city staff also, the city council. This has been an overall failure of the council, of city staff, of OPD, and the NSC specifically, that in fact, there was not the kind of, and to this day, not the kind of community involvement in the neighborhood councils that there should be, even after a quarter of a century. So I'll just leave it at that. But there's a lot of blame to go around, but I put it, it was the responsibility of the city to see to it that resolution 72727 originally and 79235 were actually implemented, and that just hasn't happened. And that's great. It has a great deal of why we're here today. Thank you.
Okay. I think Joe and then Creighton.
Yeah, that's why I love these Saturday morning meetings. Thanks for that, Jose. Look, was there mismanagement over the years? Sure. Was part of the problem this push-pull between whether they should be more hawkish on law enforcement or more, dedicated to community organizing? Yeah, I mean, that's been an ongoing battle, and that battle isn't, and the resources. I mean, you have to remember when I say you guys, because I moved to Oakland in '96. When Oakland Sharing the Vision was creating this community policing program. And it was going to start with 17 NSCs where they'd each have 3 beats. And it was supposed to move ultimately to 1 NSC per beat. So there'd be 57 NSCs citywide. I've got 7. So, to say that the NSCs don't know how to do their jobs or a failure, that kind of pisses me off. And I got to defend them. They're not all the same. Some are better, some are worse. But when you consider the huge number of resource cuts, it's I don't think you can pin that on them as individuals. And I want to say this as far as the responsibility to see new leadership. If you're suggesting that city staff, whether a sworn officer or an NSC, should say to a neighborhood council, "You need new leadership. This old bird has to go," you're crazy. That's got to come from the community and from the CPAB. As staff, we're not allowed to say bad things about our electeds. We're not allowed to say bad things about the community members we work with. And if we see a community leader who's ineffective, we need the community and the Community Policing Advisory Board to step up and make that call. I don't think you can put that on staff, because then they'll just get written up.
Okay, Community Policing Advisory Board, Creighton.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this is a great conversation. Quite frankly, I think it's a little out of scope, and we're a little, this is a little tangential to what we're focused on right now. So I don't want to kind of go down the rabbit hole of, why we don't have robust participation in some neighborhood councils versus others. But, if now that I've raised my hand and I'm in it, I think one of the things is it's a structural issue. When we think about community policing as the title of this entire program, does that elicit and inspire broad engagement in the neighborhood council structure? And the answer is clearly no, because of what community policing means to the neighborhood. So, and to residents. So, without going into deep detail, the work that we're doing at the CPAB is really trying to increase community engagement by broadening the scope of the mission, rather than just focusing on an enforcement-led approach to safety, thinking about ways in which community members can collaborate with one another, solve problems by themselves without thinking about law enforcement as the number one thing and the number one first responder. So long story short, yes, there are a number of issues with respect to neighborhood council leadership, but I think, by changing kind of the naming and the branding, the focus, I think we can increase engagement and get folks involved, and then that will naturally kind of change leadership and change the numbers of people involved in neighborhood councils.
All right, I'm putting a stop to this. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, well, Reggie's hand is up.
I
Is it
know.
on the same
Thank
thing?
you, Brenda.
Is it on the same thing?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Jesse. It's got to be said. I don't think that having a community input, no matter how difficult and ugly it may divulge, or a few may divulge into, is something that we get away from. What we want to do is change the culture of the department. I've managed all my life too. There was a time when you managed in law enforcement, you did not even care what the community said. And you told them to their face, I'm the boss, I'm the lieutenant to sergeant to captain, I know what best is in crime fighting, when in fact we did not. If you want to know what people need, you got to be close to the people who are in the need. So you're gonna get some bad apples. You're gonna get some difficult people. You can't avoid it. It's something that we don't stop. We just gotta keep it moving. And if somebody wants to leave the department because they ran across this tornado of an individual who's a horrible person, that's unfortunate, but that's the casualty of war. That's the fog of war. We keep it going. So we wanted to change, at least I thought, we wanted to make sure that Oakland Police Department through this policy is a community-oriented agency. That means we don't just solely listen to the community, but we add the community's input with our structural leadership, rank, file, and all of those other dynamics, evaluations, et cetera. And then you use both of them. It's not an either or thing.
All right, great.
And no one is saying that.
Thank you, Reggie. And Jesse is the chair of the ad hoc, so I'm turning it back over to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I appreciate everyone's input. I know that this is a very, very, this is a subject with a lot of history and a lot of feelings about it. I hope that everyone can just refocus their attention to what I have up on the screen, which is trying to capture as much as I can about it, about the thoughts in a fair way, because one, we don't have the template for evaluation quite yet, so we can't necessarily mirror or refer to it, but at the very least captures, I think, what people are maybe getting at, which is we want community feedback. We want some sort of feedback about CROs. It sounds like OPD is taking that into account if they have it, can't necessarily do it themselves. So want to make sure we explicitly put into this policy that yes, consider it if you have it, if you can get it. And if you do, don't just take it at its face value. Figure out, if you can, what was going on, or give the subject officer an opportunity to respond so that whatever the situation might be, or whatever factual scenario might give a full and fair opportunity to understand what the feedback is known so that the CRO can be evaluated fairly. What do people think about this part that's up on the screen? And I'm not considering like a community evaluation process, Paula. This is OPD does the evaluation. They take the community input. We're not trying to build in some sort of adjacent evaluation process, but they likely want the feedback from the community. And this is the way to get it to them, because they did say that they are considering it. It is members of the department evaluating members of the department.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I do think this states it very, very well. I think it's important that we also, that in addition to that, this evaluation can also be used to give credit to good CROs, to give praise to people. It's not necessarily just to say what someone's doing wrong. And I think that's an important thing to try to keep people motivated and working, is to give them pats on the back too. And I think this will do that. So thank you.
Excuse me, Jesse, we have a request in the chat from Pastor Thompson who says, can we combine the two sentences?
I assume that's about the bottom two. I couldn't quite figure it out typing very quickly. I will do my best in the meanwhile.
I think if you just add an "and" after fully understood and permit the individual CRO to respond to the feedback, you have it.
Thank you so much.
Okay, how we doing? It's now time check 11:18. I want to respect everybody's time. A robust discussion, and I appreciate it. We appreciate it. So are we good with, at least for now, this section 6 on from the evaluation section down to how do we evaluate CROs? Is this section pretty good with folks at this point?
Yes,
If so, do we want to move on, or as I said, it's 11:18. Want to make sure that we're respecting people's time. Do we want to continue or have that be the point at which we come back in 2 weeks?
Oh, actually, this, maybe we can help tee up next meeting, which is the next part that I have is I don't have any understanding or knowledge or know exactly what different levels or ranks of the community resource officers do. And I wonder if it makes sense, Lieutenant Fable or Captain Fable, to really separate out sergeants, captains. I don't think lieutenants, or maybe lieutenants. I'm not good at ranks. Captain Fable?
Oh, yeah, so you just want to, just a letter of
Background.
hierarchy?
Yeah, what do the different levels do, if anything? Are they different in their roles and responsibilities at all?
No, they are, and we follow the matrix Measure Y protocol. Really, a vast majority of the responsibilities fall into officer and then their sergeant for that protocol, and what they're required to do on a monthly and quarterly basis.
Does it go beyond officers and sergeants?
Yeah, I mean, the supervisor, of course, always evaluates. There's a lieutenant who ensures that the sergeant follows his protocol as well, but that's where it would really stop. The captain manages the whole bureau, so the CRO top tier executive would be a lieutenant, sir.
Okay. That's all the questions I have about the different ranks. I'm wondering if anyone has any thoughts about laying out the different roles and responsibilities for each level: officer, sergeant, captain, or lieutenant, and then captain. I think captain may be a little bit high level, but for this policy, but I'm open.
So would we put in a separate section for the role of the lieutenant in between the sergeant and the captain? Is that correct?
If we're going to do this, yes.
Okay.
yeah. Maybe we just not include captain at all, or just,
I would agree, ma'am. I don't think the captain would be appropriate in terms of this policy. The officer has outlined responsibilities. The sergeant ensures that those outlined responsibilities are taken care of according to the timelines of the matrix. And then, of course, the lieutenant ensures that the sergeant is conducting those audits.
Is that how it works in practice? I think a lot of sergeants are also covering neighborhood councils, aren't they?
Yeah, right now, kind of everybody is certainly playing their role among their current responsibilities, but also they're taking on additional responsibilities. But fundamentally, it would play out as I had stated.
I think that tees up our discussion probably next week pretty well. I will redraft this section now that I understand that. And then we can get through both sergeant and lieutenant and then move on to the next section. I know there's another section about programs, partnerships, collaborations, and community meetings, which I think is going to be a really good discussion. That's okay.
Sounds good to me.
sounds great. Sounds great.
As always, thanks to our community collaborators. We really appreciate it as always. So I'll just turn it back to Jesse to wrap us up, but I just want to always make sure that you community folks understand how much we appreciate their taking the time on a Saturday. Thank you so much.
Hey, Jesse, if I could jump in real quick. This is Joe.
Yep.
Enjoy it, of course, always fun stuff. I will unfortunately have to miss in 2 weeks. I'll be in Philadelphia celebrating my mom's 90th birthday when you guys are meeting. So yeah.
Great. That's
We'll be-
great.
yeah.
That's
So
great.
have some fun without me.
Thank you so
we're
much.
gonna miss you, Joe.
Yes, indeed, indeed. And can I say too, that we are making an endeavor to start promptly at 10 a.m. So please log on before 10, and we start at 10 and we will end on time, if not early, as we did today. But I really appreciate that everybody logged in and stuff and encourage you. I know we've been slow in the past to get going, but the more efficient meetings are the ones that start on time.
And possibly end earlier. So thank you all. Enjoy your Saturdays. Thank you so much. And
Thank you
we'll see you
all.
in 2 weeks.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend.
All right,
Take care.
bye-bye. Everybody's saying. Yeah, I have my blue and yellow on. Take care, Mike. Okay,
Is Rudy still with us, or he's got another meeting?
he had another meeting. He left a little while ago.
Yeah, I think we made some good progress.